If you click on that, right at the bottom, it says raise hand. So if you have something you want to say, I would encourage you to raise the hand and we'll call on you so we don't have people talking over each other. And with that, I will introduce you to Nick Kushner, who is an employee, he'll tell you what his title is, of Parks and Rec, who's working on their Read2Play program. And he knows a lot about all these things, and he's going to tell us everything he knows. Go ahead, Nick.
Good. Thanks, Vera. So as Vera said, I'm Nick Kushner. I'm a community planner with DC's Parks and Rec and project manager for the Read2Play master plan. And I'm joined by my colleague Dulce and Naomi. Dulce, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Dulce Naime. I'm also community planner for the Department of Parks and Recreation, working with Nick and this amazing master plan. Happy to be here.
So Vera, we actually have a short presentation. If that sounds good, I can run through some stuff about the plan, or do you just want me to give like a brief overview and then go right into questions? Whatever. Sorry, Ken. Okay. You were muted, I couldn't.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick, talk a bit.
Okay, great. So let me do that and Okay, let me just try this. Let me try it this way. Can you guys see, can everybody see my screen? See the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great, okay, cool. So thank you guys so much for having us today. We are really excited to talk to Capitol Hill Village. So just as a little side note, as in my past position in DC government, I worked with Gail Cohn on the Age Friendly DC initiative. So I'm sure that's a name that many of you are familiar with. And so we actually did some engagement and a lot of work with the villages, including Capitol Hill Village during that time. So excited to come and speak with you. And so just for those who this is your first introduction to Read2Play, I wanted to provide a little bit of context to jumpstart the conversation. So this plan is a 20-year vision for the Parks and Recreation Agency. And we're looking to develop strategies, actions, and also the capital investment blueprint that'll drive us going forward. So what are the sites that need investment? What types of investments do we need to make? What types of programming or initiatives should we be focused on in the years to come? Looking at both national trends and also engaging robustly with the community to see what the needs and the desires are. So one thing to note about this plan is that we're not limiting ourselves to our current inventory of parks and rec centers. We really want to look expansively across other partner providers of recreation, such as the National Park Service and our schoolyards, as well as look at opportunities for expansion, as we know we have population that is growing in the district. And so we want to keep up with that growth. So just a little bit of background on what we've done so far. We started this plan, actually we started doing some pop-up engagement right before COVID hit. And then we're kind of put on hiatus for about 6-7 months as everything kind of transitioned to the pandemic, understandably so. And then in July, we were able to launch virtually some kickoff meetings of July of last summer. We were working on a plan called the Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan at the time, which is affiliated with this master plan, but is a separate document. It's only focused on outdoor recreation and is a requirement of a federal grant where we receive matching funds from what's called the Land and Water Conservation Fund for outdoor recreation improvement. So it was actually had a separate timeline that we had to meet to stay in compliance with the grant. So that's why we focused on that chunk first. And so we did engagement more specific to that in the summer, delivered a final plan at the end of September. And then we just launched, well, not just, but we launched a survey in November, December that actually had 2 openings. There was the winter opening and then a spring opening again, where we received close to 3,000 responses from across the district total. And then we had ward by ward meetings in January and February, where we had virtual meetings with every ward of the city. This is the DC Score Plan. It's available on our website. It is a document that is very high level, very broad, but it is meant to guide how the district allocates these federal grant funds that we receive every year. So these funds have to be used for outdoor recreation. They can't go towards programming. They can't go towards interior renovations. And they are, the grant funds are a match. So the district has to have enough funds to meet a one-to-one match for whatever grants we utilize. And so this last year, there was actually a change in the formula, and DC got a huge bump in the amount of money that we get from the federal government for this. And so we now have $2.5 million allocated as of this fiscal year. And that figure kind of roughly annually for this grant. So as part of this planning process, what we want to be releasing in the fall, winter timeframe is more of a guide on how we're going to solicit public comment and feedback annually on how we allocate these funds moving forward. So that plan identified 8 key priorities that are guiding the strategies that we're working on for the Read2Play plan. These aren't kind of this isn't the framework for the plan, but these are elements that we will incorporate into it in some way. So resilience and sustainability, looking at climate change adaptation, looking at access, connectivity, and the diversity of experiences that people have at parks and rec centers. Accessibility and inclusion, making sure recs and parks are open for everyone and easily accessible. People feel safe and welcome. Health and equity. So equity is actually going to be a much larger driving force to this plan, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And health, looking at how we can improve health outcomes through our parks and rec centers. Technology, innovation, and education. So how do we utilize new technologies both to operate and maintain our parks, but also as ways to program spaces? We know that there's a big push in e-gaming. There's other nature-based technological apps, so the apps that can get kids outside using technology. And then identity and culture, so celebrating the rich history in DC. Enhancement and maintenance, which is kind of tied to our capital budgeting and how do we adequately and equitably allocate maintenance funds. And then collaboration and administration, so more of the inside operations of DPR. How are we facing with the public? How are systems working from a user interface perspective? And who can we partner with to offer more programs and more rec opportunities? So this is just a little bit of where we are and what the timeline is moving forward. So our survey closed in early April. Dulce and I are now digging through the final total results of that survey. And we're going to release a survey analysis report that will detail all those findings at the end of the month or early May. We are also working on some draft strategies and a framework for the plan that will be released at the end of May, early June. And then we're going to have another round of citywide meetings in mid to late June, and then some pop-up engagement, hopefully, as more people are getting vaccinated, more people are, it's getting a little bit safer to open up and be around people as long as wear masks and keep our distance. So we're hoping to do some actual in-person pop-up engagement in June, early July timeframe, and then we'll be releasing a draft plan for public comment, hopefully in early August, and then a final plan slated for September. So this is just a little context. I know you guys are more familiar with this than we are. Well, I actually live in Capitol Hill, so I'm pretty familiar with this too. But all of these parks, these are the parks in Capitol Hill. We have a lot of great DPR parks and federal parks, a lot of local neighborhood focused federal parks in Capitol Hill. That's a unique aspect of the Hill. This is just taken from our earlier word by word slides, but I highlighted the Capitol Hill, more Capitol Hill focused recreation and park amenities just in a list form as opposed to a map form. And then just some of our upcoming capital improvements projects that we can talk about if you have questions. So Dulce has been the project manager previously on Eastern Market Phase 1 project and developing that new playground. That project is currently in Phase 2, going through the parcel around the metro station. We also have the Kingsman Field renovations ongoing now. Those should be opening up, I believe, soon. If they haven't already, I'm not sure. I haven't gotten an update on that project recently. And then we have 2 exciting projects kicking off in Capitol Hill. The 17th and C Playground, or some people call Spielberg Park, over on 17th and C. And and there's a small playground there. It's a large triangle park, but the playground's in really bad shape. The park's not accessible. And then Garfield Park renovations, where we have $900,000 actually in our budget now, and we're going to be kicking both of those plans off next week. So if anyone is interested in information about those, I can send you the, I can make sure that you get an email or send it to Vera to send out on the information for those meetings. There'll be 2 virtual meetings. I think they're Monday and Tuesday of next week. And then kind of Capitol Hill adjacent in Noma, there is Swamp Poodle Dog Park, if anyone's familiar with. The bid recently purchased the vacant lot across the street from that park. And so that's currently being called Swamp Poodle 2. And that is having a design meeting tonight, actually. And I'm happy to send that information as well for anyone that would like it. And just quickly, just to show you a snapshot of where we are with the survey results, we got 2,913 total responses. Ward 6 was actually our largest ward of the city. We also asked zip codes. So in the analysis report, we'll break down elements by zip code as well. And these were the top priorities that people were interested in. So the access connectivity priority, enhancement and maintenance, resilience and sustainability, health and equity. The top barriers were programs filling up too quickly and lack of awareness of a lack of desired amenities. So it's really interesting to see those as the top 3 because they all necessitate much different solutions to address. And so it's good that we're keeping all of those in mind as we think about how to better serve the public. And then this is the overall list across the city of all the survey respondents of the most desired amenities. So what's interesting is we presented these lists in February after our first round of the survey, and they didn't change much. The only change that I noted was that amphitheater and performance space actually leapfrogged landscape green space. So that is the only change from what we presented in February. But the nature trails, community gardens, natural areas, and wildlife habitat is the top 3. Most of these are outdoor amenities. So we definitely see a focus on communities wanting us to invest in outdoor recreation. And then this is just, this is partial data. We don't have the data coded and analyzed yet for the current 2,913 responses, but this is just for Ward 6, what the most visited parks were on the survey, and then those that people would prioritize for improvement. So what really stands out is that Rumsey is far and above requested for additional improvements. And we heard that a lot in our Ward 6 conversation as well, that the pool is old and needs additional care and maintenance and potentially a complete modernization. And so we are using this to inform a capital blueprint that we'll be releasing as part of the plan, as well as an equity framework that we're currently working on, looking at best practices from across the country to evaluate with objective data where the most equitable investments would be to make. And so that's just a little overview. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and just to have a conversation. This is the best way to reach us at the ready2play@dc.gov, so we can track emails as ready2play emails. And then our website, of course, is ready2playdc.com, which has all of the engagement and presentations and recordings from our previous meetings I mentioned in the January, February timeframe, and is where we'll be posting all of our future documentation for the plan. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before we start with questions, let me mention that obviously we have captions on this, which I'm very pleased with because you often have trouble understanding, some people at least. However, what happens, excuse me, what happens is that the chats end up in the middle of the captions, but you can move the captions. So if you put the cursor on your captions, the hand, you can move them anywhere you want on the screen, I think. Yeah, you can even put them in front of people's faces. So move the captions at will, okay? So who would like to go first? You remember how to raise your hand? You go down to reactions and then up to raise your hand. And if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to call on you because I know you all have something to say. I'll give you a minute to figure out how to raise your hand. Okay.
Patricia was fast.
Hold it. Lisa, where's Lisa? All right.
Oh, I think Patricia's trying to talk.
Yeah,
But she might
Patricia's
be muted.
trying to.
I didn't realize I was accepted. Vera asked me to speak about the Rumsey Pool. You already know a lot about the Rumsey Pool, how important the people consider it for needing improvement. But I participated in the senior water aerobics program for 11 and a half years. And it was always oversubscribed. There were always people turned away. They started another class a little later. Part of the attraction of that one particular class is Jeannie Johnson was teaching it, and she's just a fabulous instructor. And but also at 10 o'clock, it's later in the day, and it breaks into your day a little more if you're doing something. But I am very grateful that class was available to me. It was one of the most, it was by far the most integrated activity that I participated in the city. It was, and I made a lot of friends and acquaintances over the period that I was swimming there, participating in that. I'd also, and so I would encourage you to have more of those classes, the senior classes in the morning. It's the one I was going to was only Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And, you know, I think Tuesday and Thursday, the swim team was working had the lanes at that time. And I don't know whether the lanes could be reconfigured in a different way so that the water aerobics class would get the shallow lanes. They do that, but they cut the lanes too much at the shallow area of the pool. There could be, there's a whole area in there for water walking that's probably at least 3 lanes wide. If people want to do lap swimming, then they could. The other thing is that facility has an event space or a room that is not used, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, for any activities for the community. That I think basically, it's not a very large room. The refrigerator's in there. I think the staff uses it for meetings and eating and stuff. I don't know whether there's some way that space could be made available for some kind of physical activity. You know, like a indoor qigong or something that not only for seniors, but you know, maybe children's programs or whatever in the afternoon. But that space seems underutilized to me. And if you're going to design the whole facility over again, you got to make a bigger room, indoor room, maybe you know, second level.
It's interesting because we've actually heard that at a couple of our pools. The way they were designed, there's like 1 or 2 small indoor spaces, and we haven't really been using them effectively. We've treated them just as the pool, as the resource, but not as kind of a functioning center, which could have indoor programming as well. So that's really good to hear. And yeah, noting all these comments, I think those were great comments to have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me talk about what's important to me. I'm a master gardener, and I take care of several gardens on Capitol Hill, including my own. I'm particularly concerned about the pocket parks. I think for the most part, they are really underutilized. I know DPR doesn't have a lot of resources to take care of them, and that some of the people who are responsible, some of the community people have formed friends of the park through DPR. And I think that process perhaps could be made a little easier. It's a little cumbersome at the moment. I mean, all we want to do is volunteer our time and possibly give some money to renovation. But my real comment is that these parks, as they're scattered all around Capitol Hill, are really valuable places if they had benches. I understand the problem with benches, but I think perhaps we have overcome some of that. And I would strongly recommend that every pocket park have at least one bench. If you've ever been to the park north of Eastern Market on a Saturday or a Sunday, you'll see people sitting on the grass, on the curbs, on the turtles, but there are no benches, which to me is just ridiculous. This is a city, we should have benches. My friends in Noma routinely put benches in their parks, and they don't seem to have a big problem with them. They're, as you said, they're working on a new park. I've seen the plans, they're pretty interesting. And they've got lots of seating. Us seniors, we might just want to go to a park to sit, or we want to take a walk and stop and sit and rest for a couple minutes and then proceed on. So that's important to me. Okay, who else have we got who wants to speak up? Leanna, you want to say something?
I would have said the same things you said. I really think we need more benches around, and I think we need an easier way of doing things with parks. Like I have worked at Sherwood Rec Center gardening, and we tried to form an organization, but it was so complicated.
Can't hear you well.
I'm sorry. I had some experience with Sherwood Rec Center working in the garden, and I still do work in the garden. We tried to make an organization that would support it, but we had to have a, we had to go jump through too many loops, that it was easier just to do it. And I think it should be a way that we could be connected to the rec center. And the benches, I definitely agree with. We definitely need more benches.
Yeah, Leanna and I are bikers, and the village has an active biking group. And I know Parks and Rec doesn't do too much with bike paths, whereas the Park Service has some wonderful bike paths. If there's anything you can do to work something for bikers into your plan, I think it would be most appreciated by many of us.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
A lot of other parks and recreation plans and parks and recreation departments have a larger role than DPR does structurally with bike trails and bike lanes, well, bike trails at least in other cities. Part of that is just the nature of DC's parks and the size of our parks. Our DPR's parks tend to be pretty small, but we do work with DDOT. We've actually used some of their rec trails funding to do some new nature trails in some of our parks. So it's the process we're just starting the last couple of years, but and actually both of them were in Ward 7. So there's Pope Branch Park and then a Branch Avenue Park where there was some trail rehab, not really for biking, but nature walks. So I think there's opportunities there, definitely.
Okay, Muriel, I know you have something to say.
Well, my comment relates more to indoor, because I think we have a real problem when the weather is very, very hot or when the weather is very, very cold. And some of us are great walkers. And sometimes when it is so badly hot or severely hot or so severely cold, it really limits those of us who want to walk. And so my push has actually been, and I keep talking about that, is to have some place where there is an indoor walking space where seniors or everybody else could walk in the weather at the time when the weather is inclement. And I keep pushing for that. I know you're talking now about outdoor facilities, but this is a real problem for many of us who are seniors. And so I will mention it again. I brought it up in a number of meetings, but nobody seems to ever gone on to it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And I just want to clarify that this plan will address indoor and outdoor. It was that statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan that was only outdoor, but this Ready to Play plan is both.
Okay, well then my push continues very hard, and I would like to see something happen, because there's so many days in the year when it's so hot during the summer when I need to get out and walk, and it's just too warm to do that, or too cold. or there's too much ice on the ground and I'm afraid that I'll fall and I'll be a candidate for the hospital system, and I don't want to do that.
Okay.
We
All
have seen many requests also in our survey while we are cleaning the data about walk tracks inside, like indoor, and about like also walk biking infrastructure in the park or biking path.
The problem with the indoor situation is that some senior people are no longer driving, so that we would have to address some kind of a system where we could get people to that facility, since it wouldn't be convenient for all people. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the village might be able to help with that. We do offer rides to people, and that's one of our major programs. Also, so Nick knows, we have several walking groups, one that does long distance and one that does much shorter distances. And so we are all in all pretty active. And one of the things we're active with, I'd like to have Peggy Crenshaw talk a bit about pickleball. Peggy, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep. Nope. Now you're muted again.
Oh, okay. Now I'm okay? Okay. First, I'd like to mention those charts, because you were looking at what parks need attention, and Garfield Park was sort of in the middle on all of them. And I use Garfield Park a lot, as do a huge number of people. And it is so overused that there is no turf left. You know, the day school, St. Peter's, they all use it. And the children are there all day, and then the adults come. There really are very few benches in Garfield. There's some, but benches would be a big help, especially for the seniors. And more attention. You had allocated $900,000 for it. Now CSX has between $1 million and $1.5 million that was supposed to be used for renovation of the areas that they disrupted when they put the train tracks and enlarged them there. And nothing has been done with that. And as far as I know, nothing has been done with that additional money. But there's an effort, in large part because of the pickleball players, to integrate the closed Virginia Avenue with the rest of the park. And the pickleball players, for those of you who don't know what pickleball is, it's the fastest growing sport in the world, actually. It's sort of a mini version of tennis. And about 3 to 4 years ago, the citizens cleaned up the closed part of Virginia Avenue, which will remain closed because the architect of the Capitol has a big wall across it because it connects to the power plant. And therefore, they don't want it open for security reasons. And so that during the CSX project, it became a virtual dump. And a bunch of us pickleball players looked at it and decided you could put pickleball courts here. They're very small, they're 44 by 20 feet. And so we cleaned it up, taking out literally 30, 40, 50 wheelbarrows of dirt, 50, 60 bags of trash. We swept it, we patched it, and we painted what are now 4 pickleball courts there. And yesterday we had 12 people playing on 3 courts. It's very well used. We have a locker that we have a combination lock for, and people know the combination so they could play anytime. And it's the perfect place for pickleball courts. It would be nice if we didn't have to play with the cracks. The balls, they go every which way, but we're used to the cracks. We like the trees. It's the only outdoor court in the city where you actually have trees. So in the summer, it's much cooler there than the other outdoor courts. Most of us seniors can't play in the other outdoor courts. It's simply too hot because there's no shade at all. And so the seniors like it at Garfield. And when the attention is paid to it, the plans I have seen when I've met with people have been very elaborate, including amphitheaters, including Saturday markets. What we would like is just to retain and make it simple. Now, under the freeway is a problem because the homeless have moved in and nobody is picking up the trash on that section of the court. And as they had finished the project and they opened up the walkway under the freeway to get to Whole Foods and into farther southeast and southwest, people are using that all the time. There's regular pedestrian passage through there, but the steps going down were old and people were falling. So citizens, again, they put up a railing so people could get through, but it's always muddy in that section of the road. The trash is bad. So what we'd like to see is really quite a simple plan where pickleball courts could be put on a repaved road. And we don't need the full pickleball courts. We don't need 4 sides of screening. You know, we can chase some balls. We just like a very simple paved spot to play, perhaps opening up some of the wall that goes down so more people would come. Because what we've noticed since we've cleaned it up is that all of the parents use it. They bring their kids to see the trains. They'll use their scooters. They use their little bicycles on it. There's Tai Chi classes there. There's, you know, other young teenage groups are there. There have been film groups there that are doing films. So it's a very popular recreational area, and we just like some attention that could be done without spending a whole lot of money.
Thanks for all of those comments. I think that's great and well said. And I'll make sure that I pass on that information about the Garfield Park meeting to viewers. Oh, you shared it in the chat? Okay, great. If you sent it in the chat. Okay, so that meeting will be specifically talking about all the needs in Garfield. Right. As I said, we have 900. We know there's a lot that needs to be improved in that park. And another thing that is just kicking off now as well is that the Department of Transportation has funding for improving the pedestrian connection south. So they're working, their scope is going to address more from a transportation perspective. How do you make those steps more accessible? How do you prevent the erosion that's happening underneath the bridge there and all the mud and the flooding that happens? And so we're working closely with them to ensure that whatever they're doing is considerate and protective of the current and desired future recreation uses. So those two community projects that are kind of kicking off at the same time will be integrated between DPR and DDOT on the back end to know that we're passing on the information that we hear from meetings, and they're passing on anything that they're working on to us. Good. So that,
Good, thank you.
Yeah, and we would love to find more money also to make improvements under that spot. I know we've been approached by the skaters that are down there, and we've been in talks with DDOT and the bid and others about, what's the future of that space and how can we develop an arrangement that technically it's still DDOT management of that space. So we'll have to work out some kind of MOU of occupancy for DPR before we can make significant investments in it. But we're in those conversations now to do that. So.
Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, Becky, we don't have your picture, but you have something to say. So could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry. I automatically do that for all my other Zooms, and I forgot what Zoom I was going to be on. So excuse me for not doing it with video. However, I'm quite concerned about senior parks. They're all over the world. Many in this part of the country, in the United States, Texas, Cincinnati, Ohio, and so on and so forth. And lots of seniors seem to be a little bit trepidatious or feel unwelcome in our parks. It's a wonderful place to socialize, not only playgrounds and equipment for children, dog parks, and so forth. But I think that it might be nice to have some simple equipment, including balance and what have you, for seniors. Widen some of the areas to make it more readily available for Qigong, Tai Chi, and try to change the culture in our parks. I don't know. That was my take on this.
Okay, let me say one thing there. I don't know how many of you have been south of the freeway to see the new Virginia Avenue Park, but after CSX finished with their tunneling project, they provided some funds and DPR provided some more funds. And there's been a wonderful renovation of that park, which includes lots of benches and a pergola for shade and lots of new trees going in. That is a huge park. And there's also a community garden, which has been very active for many years. But there's definitely room in that park for adult exercise equipment. I understand that a kids equipment area is going to be going in the near future, but I think something for seniors, as Becky said, could be modest, could be off to one side, and would be used because there are several senior housing projects in that area, not to mention people who live in row houses in that area. I urge you all to go down and take a look at that. It's quite nice. Okay, Mary Case.
Can I just ask you where that park is?
Oh, it's at 12th and Virginia. Yeah, 12th and Virginia Southeast. It's just below the freeway. They have a huge dog park there also. So if you go down 11th Street, you'll see it. It's between 11th and 12th, I think, on Virginia.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to say how happy I am to hear the words modest and simple used in this discussion, because I do think that the simpler we make things, the
Can't hear you.
The simpler. Can you hear me now?
Better.
It's a little better.
Okay. It's just that my face looks so enormous in this screen. The simpler we make things, the better it is. I'm sitting here at this moment looking out of my office window, which I frequently do, on Watkins Park. This is a park that I have been involved with for the last 32 years living here. At this current moment, it's in a terrible state of decline and overuse. So this week I sent this morning actually, I sent an email to several of the WIGs at DPR trying to get some attention on this park because of its overuse. Currently, we are now surrounded on 3 sides. The park itself is now surrounded on 3 sides by housing. And there's no parking, of course, when people come in from, when the field is being used by people who are not from here because they drive typically. So there's that. And then there's the question I always have about how we continue to keep the parks aligned with the neighborhood. And that's the issue that we have. This park is no longer aligned with the neighborhood. It's just overused in the extreme. As an example, I'll just say on Easter Sunday from 10:30 until 8:30, the park was being used for football player practice, which means there are 5 to 7 groups of kids and their coaches and all kinds of fans, which is what football is about. That meant there were more than 200 people on that field, and there was loud amplified music on Easter Sunday. I'm like really exercised about this. So since I've been working on this park for so long, I realize that I'm not doing a very good job, and I'm gonna be focusing on this particular aspect of our neighborhood quite deeply over the next months to come. So any advice that anybody could have for me about that, I would certainly be happy to receive it. Thank you.
Nick, could you talk a little bit about how an organization gets approval to use a park for an official event?
Sure, yeah. So all of that should happen through our permits office. We have an online system for reserving and booking use of space. Any group over 10 people is supposed to get a permit for that space usage. Preference goes to youth sports. And so if you're like an outside entity, which it sounds like these groups might have been, then they would have had to have permits to be in that space. That goes through our permitting office. The other way that fields get used regularly is through DPR programming. And so we basically use the same system, but we just on the back end allocate any time slots available to, if it's a specific DPR program, like a DPR football that needs the space, they would allocate time to that. One thing we're looking at through this plan is just our field distribution and allocation. We'll also be looking at, so just looking at like, where are our fields? What types of fields are there? What level of field is it? Because I'm thinking one of the reasons Watkins gets so much use is because it's like a higher quality, even though it probably is in need of repair, a higher quality field than a lot of our other spaces. And so programs want to go there, DPR wants their programs to go there. And I hear what you're saying. If it's surrounded by residential and you're doing loud programming, like sometimes later into the evening, that might not be as a compatible of a use as like a more come as you will type field that is maybe less designed and programmed and maintained. And so I understand that point, that maybe like the amenity or asset that is there doesn't necessarily correlate to where it is positioned within a neighborhood, whereas some kind of like marquee field like that would be more popular or more fitting to be like by a metro and not around a bunch of housing and in a quieter neighborhood space. And so that's one of the things we're looking at. And then we're also looking at permitted space versus across our field inventory. So like the time permitted and where we have the greatest wait lists. Because what we hear is that there's just a lack of fields constantly. Our permits division is constantly dealing with issues of not having enough fields available for all the groups that want them. And so we're going to be looking and working very closely with our permits division to think about new strategies and new approaches to how we're doing it so that we can permit equitably and also protect kind of the interests of surrounding neighborhoods as well to having access and using their neighborhood rec space as they want.
So thank you so much for that clarification, Nick.
One of the places that I think of this major football league that uses Watkins could go is the fields at RFK. I realize they are not free. On the other hand, this is a very popular activity. Mary's right. If you go by there are hundreds of people on that field watching these 4-year-olds play football. That kind of thing, I don't know. I don't know how to allocate that, so I'll leave that to you, but it's there and it is a problem. They were having problems with trash too. And the organization said, oh, we'll pick up the trash. And they picked up the trash inside the fence, and outside the fence is all kinds of trash. So I do think Mary's right. That needs some attention. And if you're interested, Nick, Phil Mendelson just moved in right across from Watkins. So to the extent that we need a little political push on this, I think we can get it from Phil. Okay, anybody else have anything to say?
I do have something, yes. I just want to say to Nick, thank you for his explanation. What I'm dealing with right now is the fact that the negotiations that we made a couple of times in the past with DPR have been, we negotiated for free play on Friday nights and Sundays. And that is, we negotiated for free play on Friday nights and Sundays. And that is what has been taken away from us this spring. It was going pretty well. And then this came along, so I'm shocked. I wasn't paying as much attention to it. So I'm going to be working on it. And anything you can do back at the office to help about that, I'd appreciate it. I sent this email to Betty Hester Antoine Green, who hasn't been around recently, I understand, Seth Shapiro, and David Sack. So you can.
Okay, you have the right people on that email. So I can also follow up, find out what's going on, because we, yeah, if there is an outstanding agreement, we should be honoring that. So.
See, the thing is, we don't have a copy of that agreement, because back when this was all done, there was a lot of animosity about the redoing of this field, because we realized that there would be a lot heavier use when Mr. Fenty said to the little football team, because they won some kind of national thing or semi-national thing, I'm going to make you a field. So there was, you know, this was, we can bring this back to the arrogance of youth, unfortunately, with Mr. Fenty, our mayor at that time. Thank you.
Mary, do you remember when you did this agreement? What year?
Well, it was when Fenty was in office, maybe his second or third year. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
Wow, that's a while ago.
Yeah.
Let me say, oh, there's Dare. Okay. I was just going to say something about the fact that I read somewhere that DPR and the Park Service have some sort of agreement where DPR can do some things in the parks that are the Park Service is responsible for. And one of these parks that really needs a lot of help is Lincoln Park. And Dare we'll talk about Lincoln Park a little bit, please.
Hi guys, sorry I was late. I got held up at a work thing, but I made it. So I'm here to talk about two parks. Lincoln Park, first of all, has been very extremely, well, it's always heavily used, but during the pandemic, it's just been, I guess, a lifeline for people, which is great. But as a result, it's looking horrible, particularly the, you know, the middle area where the dogs hang out. So we're not really sure what to do. I've been speaking with Jenny, can't remember her last name, who's heads up the Friends of Lincoln Park. And she's been trying to engage, NPS and didn't realize that DPR sort of had a relationship where they could possibly assist with, you know, getting that park, you know, zhuzhing it back up again. So I said that I would, you know, attend this call and just kind of find out where that is. She hasn't had much luck getting in touch with NPS apparently.
So I can respond to the coordination between us and NPS. So we met with NPS before kicking off this plan. We will meet with them again before releasing any draft strategies, and we're going to share all of the information that we've gathered from our surveys, from the feedback that we're hearing. What Vera was referring to is called a cooperative management agreement. So we've signed our first one of these at Franklin Square downtown. It was with NPS, the BID, and DPR. And so DC government is prohibited from spending any funds on land that we don't own. So what a cooperative management agreement does is it gives us the legal authority to spend capital funds and also potentially to operate and program spaces that are NPS lands. As of right now, that's the only site that we actually have a cooperative management agreement for. NPS has expressed a strong openness to pursuing this in other sites. So that's one thing that our conversations with them after this engagement and as part of this plan is going to lead to down the line, hopefully, is kind of a package of additional park sites where we can pursue cooperative management agreements. That's our hope and our intent from it. Of course, it relies on NPS also being at the table and then getting all the lawyers together to craft out the language. So this is probably, to be honest, at least a couple of years down the line that we get kind of a major package of cooperative management agreements, but this plan will be the first step in that process.
Okay, so meanwhile, Nick, should I have, they're pretty active and they do what they can, you know, they've been doing some plantings, but it's sort of, and they have bodies that can help with things. So can I have them reach out to you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'd be happy to talk to them and meet with them. I have connections at NPS as well. So I can make sure the information gets to appropriate people who are currently overseeing the park.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And your second thing, Dare? You said,
oh yeah, well the second thing is pretty minor. It's just a little pocket park that that some of the neighbors and I have taken an interest in, at the corner of Mass Ave, 8th Street and Constitution Northeast. And the Capitol Hill Garden Club, very generously gave us some money to restore the planters there. That was sort of like out of our reach. They were clogged and we didn't know what to do. So we were able to hire landscapers who actually excavated them, and turns out there were roots growing up inside, which is, we never would have been able to figure that out, let alone handle it. So anyway, so Capitol Hill Garden Club generously gave us, about around $1,000 to do that and then replant them. So that one, every once in a while we call 311 because the wall kind of crumbles a little bit. And that's kind of out of our reach. The wall is crumbling right now in a couple different spots. And then, but as far as, the planting itself goes, we do call, there's a neighborhood person, we don't even know who it is, who mows sometimes. And other times we call 311 and eventually, someone will come mow it. But we've been doing really well on our own, just kind of like maintaining it. But it's mainly, I think we would need a little bit of extra help with that wall. And possibly if the planters continue to be problematic, one of them has become waterlogged again. So our landscaper's coming back and he's going to take another look at it. So I can imagine if that continues to be a problem, we think we've solved it, but we may need help there as well.
Okay, that's actually great to hear, because one of our colleagues, David Wooten, is leading up. So we have a small amount of money, I forget how much it is, for that park actually. And so, but we didn't, I think it was put in our budget and we didn't know who to reach out to or talk to about how it got there necessarily, and what the improvements desired were. So hearing it, that it's the wall crumbling is great, because he went and saw the site the other day. So wasn't sure if there was like a particular issue that triggered it. So I'm happy to put you and him in touch, or if there's someone else from your group, whoever would be best, I can definitely pass on his information.
That would be me.
Okay, great. I'll definitely.
So I can email you after this, and
okay.
I'll connect you with the Lincoln Park person as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, David will be happy to find a connection then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Let me mention for history's sake that the park that Dare is talking about, the Triangle Park, was designated a Lady Bird Johnson Park way back when. And the money to renovate that park, I think, probably came from the feds, if I had to guess, given the name of the park. So it is really, in terms of landscaping, much more intricate than most of the other parks, including its counterpart park, which is just mainly turf. But it's interesting. Our neighbors do things. That turf park, they're having a cleanup next week, and they've asked neighbors to contribute $10 or $20 so that they can do some rototilling and some other kinds of things. I mean, I know that the DPR has limited funds, but it does seem sometimes that our tax dollars, of which there seem to be many, having just completed my income tax, should go to some of the things we care about also. And these parks are important to us, really important to us, as is the pool and the community centers. The other place I would urge people to go is the community center. Yeah, the name slips me. The one that's out at 18th Street, which was recently rebuilt and has a wonderful facility. And I'm going to try to get Capitol Hill Village to take a little more active role there. It also has an outdoor track and an area that's used for soccer a little bit. So there are these facilities around the hill that we don't make sufficient use of, whereas Lincoln Park and Watkins, and even to a certain extent, Stanton Park, are overused because they're so centrally located.
Yeah.
The other thing we have now are a number of dog parks in the neighborhood. And I think we have to get some of the dog people to use them. There's one down by Whole Foods, south of the freeway. There's a new one at 11th Street. There's one out at Kingman somewhere that I haven't seen. And there's one in Noma. And the people who are walking dogs are supposedly walking dogs for exercise. And they should be willing to go a few blocks more and leave our people parks to the people and go to the dog parks. That's a bias of mine, sorry. Okay, anybody else have anything to say?
Yes, I just want to ask Dulcie and Nick to maybe give us their emails so we can contact them if we need to.
Sure.
Yeah, so Dulce, can you put that in the chat?
Yes,
and mine's just my name, nick.kushner@dc.gov. Dulce's is the same, Dulce.
Okay, I got it. All right, thanks. That's what I suspected. Thank you.
Yeah, I can give it to you if you need it.
I got it now.
Okay, we've been a little over an hour. So unless somebody has something to say, I thank Nick and Dulce for joining us to listen to our, I won't say complaints, I will say our desires for the parks, the pool, and the recreation center. This is really important to us, and Capitol Hill Village is going to stay up on it, and I'm going to keep in touch with everybody here and everybody else who signed up and wasn't able to attend this meeting so that we can continue to make our voices heard.
Thank you.
And Vera, I want to thank you for putting this together and keeping us on our feet. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.